not least presentation of the evening. It's an oration titled, "Be Careful, Little Eyes, What You See, How Horror Films Are Detrimental to the Soul and Body." Please welcome Daniel MacLean.
For the majority of history, entertainment has been limited to visual and auditory experiences, separately, in the forms of art or music. The implementation of theater allowed for a combination of these two that became wildly attractive to both the common man and the elite person alike. However, the invention of film allowed for a medium with the potential to trump all other mediums' entertainment experience. Because film offers the visual stimulus of art or theater, the audio and the music of the greatest orchestras in the world, and the writing and ingenuity of the greatest authors and screenwriters of our time, all combined into a concentrated, refined bundle of entertainment that everyone has access to. Because of this, film has the power to inspire us, motivate us, and make us laugh, but also the power to tear us down, to harm us, and to pollute our views on the world. Unfortunately, most modern films instill on their audiences the latter options. Some genres, specifically horror films, stick with their audiences more significantly after seeing them. But why do movies, specifically horror movies, affect us so drastically? As Christians, should we be watching horror films? How horrible are horror movies? Well, society relishes in the cathartic experience that is granted by horror films, even if they don't realize the adverse effects that comes with them. For they are harmful to humanity, affect our daily lives, promote violence in society, and are damaging to both the body and the soul. But first things first, what is a horror film? A horror film is a film that is designed with the intent to startle, scare, frighten, disgust, or disturb an audience by any vile or disgusting means necessary. And this is for an entertainment purpose. So this isn't a security cam video that accidentally catches a freeway tragedy. This is a movie that is written, designed, produced, and marketed with the intent to shock people into a genuine state of fear so they feel the release of catharsis for pleasure and for entertainment. And yet we love horror films because they allow us the opportunity to engage in the abnormal without having to be confronted by the immorality of the action itself. Essentially, horror films allow us to sin without actually having to sin ourselves. Now, this leads to an interesting argument made by both Christians and non-Christians alike. That if I can differentiate between what is good and what is bad, then I can just watch whatever I want. Because as long as I know it's bad, I can protect myself from it. But what we don't take into account with these movies is that they're not just affecting us intellectually, but physically and spiritually. For instance, in a study done by the National Institute of Health, subjects were shown violence and horror in media over the course of several months. At the end of these tests, the subjects' brains showed negative progression in areas related to attitude, patience, and self-control, as well as incurring side effects such as a desensitization to physical stimulus, onset of anxiety issues, and overall drops in health. So basically, horror films are actually physically hurting us. But what about the spiritual consequences? In Scripture, we're called to be discerning with what we engage in, whether that's the people we interact with, the decisions we make, or the entertainment that we watch. Every action, every choice, and every circumstance we are in plays into the way that we interpret and interact with the world around us. So we are called to differentiate between what is lovely and what is evil, because it truly defines who we are. So if we choose to go see a horror film, which we know is actually physically hurting us and morally incorrect, then not only are we choosing to subject ourselves to harm, but we are choosing to disobey Scripture, and by proxy, sinning against God. And the consequences of that are quite clear. For the wages of sin is death. But then some might say, well, there's horrific stories in Scripture, so what makes that any different than a horror movie? And this is true. The Old Testament is riddled with stories of war, horror, and death that portray intense scenes of violence and cruelty. But the difference between a horror movie and these gruesome stories in Scripture is that Scripture stories are of an extreme moral importance, meant for the betterment of humanity. Whereas a horror film only seeks to disregard morality, to engage the sinful nature of man for pleasure and for entertainment. So despite what makes horror films attractive to the masses and to Christians alike, with its deviant nature, its offer of catharsis, and its opportunity to disregard morality, it actually allocates devastating physical, spiritual, and mental consequences. So, what do we do? The answer to this horrible, pun intended, issue seems quite self-explanatory. We should just stop watching horror films, right? But that doesn't solve the issue, because the genre will continue to exist whether we like it or not. Until we enter a new heaven and a new earth, this innate call to the deviant will still grasp at our throats. But we're called in Scripture, in places like Philippians 2:5, to prove ourselves to be blameless and innocent children of God, above reproach, amidst a perverse and crooked generation, amongst whom we will appear as lights in the world. Society's slippery slope will only continue to grow more and more sleek with time. We must be the safeguards to those who might fall victim to it. The light of the world and the salt of the earth. Thank you.